And welcome in for another Saturday edition of the Ball Boys podcast. Last week we gave you the Eastern Conference predictions. This week we're coming to you with our Western Conference predictions. And let's elephant in the room. We're recording this Thursday night after the fighting the Phils eliminate the ATL Braves up
Yeah,
out of there. So if
yeah.
you want
The
to,
Philly, the Phillies on the Braves, bro. It's getting out of
yeah,
hand. Back-to-back years, they just had nothing, no answers for us. And hey,
absolutely,
we look great. But the Diamondbacks they're hot. So it's a basketball podcast tonight, so I'll leave it at
yeah,
that. But
yeah.
it's
We'll
going to be
see.
a fun series, and especially in the AL too. So
Yeah,
hyped.
we'll leave it at Go Phils. But we
Facts.
got the West. We were talking right before the pod. It's loaded. It's stacked. It felt like when we did the East, there were some clear teams that we could see their
Mm.
direction was not playoffs. In the West, I mean, you got, if you want to argue Portland is trying to win games, then you got 15 teams that are trying. If
Yeah.
not, you got 14 teams that are vying for playoff spots. They either brought in new coaches, drafted Victor Wembanyama. I mean, it's loaded, but we're going to hop in and we're going to start with a Bradley Beal conversation. And I know this Bradley Beal trade happened months ago at this point, right? But now, as we lead up to the season, it seems like this was the most significant move made by a Western Conference team to improve. Obviously, Portland moving Dame was more significant. If you want to hear our thoughts on that, go check out the Eastern Conference episode. But Bradley Beal to the Suns and DeAndre Ayton, obviously off the Suns, they get Nurkic. So looking at this team as a whole as they go into this season, when they originally made the Bradley Beal trade, there was some wonder as to what the depth of this team would be. But I think them getting involved in that Portland deal to get off of Ayton, bring in some wing defenders,
Mhm.
and bring back a center in Nurkic who is he better than Beal or not Beal? Ayton? Absolutely not. But he fits what they wanted him to be, right? There's one basketball, and
Yeah.
DeAndre Ayton wasn't going to be the guy that was
Nope.
scoring it, and that's just quite frank. So now this team going into the year, they say that they're going to be running Bradley Beal at point guard. I think Devin Booker will be the primary ball handler, if I'm being completely honest. So Booker, Beal in the backcourt. We're gonna see who that small forward ends up being. If I had to guess, opening night, I would say it'll be Josh Okogie, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic. Off the bench, you got guys like Grayson Allen, Keita Bates Diop, Eric
Yeah.
Gordon, Bull maybe getting some minutes. They bring in a new head coach in Frank Vogel. This Suns team is a very interesting, just mall paper mesh ball of talent, but I actually like it. I like it for the regular season. I think in certain playoff matchups, this team definitely is going to struggle defensively, but for the regular season, where defenses play a little lackluster, this team's going to have nights where they look unstoppable. They are
Mhm.
going to put up a shit ton of points. And what this team has better than any team is shot creators. And I feel like that's where in the playoffs, this team could very much so strive. Um, Kevin Durant, I still view him as the best scorer in basketball. And maybe I get some hate for that, maybe I don't, but he is a three-level scorer still. When he's out there, he's still clearly a top 10 player in basketball. And I hope we get to see him in some meaningful playoff games. Devin Booker, Bradley Beal now in a winning situation for the first time in his career. Does he step up? Does he step into that role? That'll be interesting to see. But overall, I'm really excited for this Suns team. And I think they're a fun team. And with the Bradley Beal deal, I don't feel like they're necessarily such a super team. And maybe that's because of the moves that were made in the East. But I
Mhm.
actually find myself rooting for the Suns to be good this year. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing I think for the Suns is just I think staying healthy is the biggest thing. And two, it's going to take a while for that trio to really gel and get that chemistry because unlike the East, they're like we mentioned, the West is stacked, so they don't have that luxury of really getting to test the waters out. They got to come in running and get a top seed because if you don't in the West, you're cooked. Because if like you need a top at least 4 seed, or you're going to be struggling in the playoffs. So
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing. They got to get off to a hot start, and I'm just excited to see how Beal fits into their like offense. Because it's like you even guessed, you're like, who's the primary ball handler? And I mean, Booker, yes, but like, what happens when it's crunch time? And it reminds me of like the Heat, the first season. Like nobody knew, like, well, is it Bosh? Is it Wade? Is it LeBron? Like, and it's kind of similar to this situation. I'm kind of excited to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think the ball's got to be in Kevin Durant's hands in this situation, but obviously, that was with what I just said earlier. I will say this team does need to be weary of injury. Kevin
Hmm.
Durant and Bradley Beal, those are both guys that have certainly missed time in the past. And with the lack of depth, this is a team where if they get into an injured spot, like you said, the West is loaded. They remind me a little bit of what the Lakers were last year, where the Lakers got into the playoffs as the seventh seed, but they were battling every series. Memphis in the first round, Golden State then. And by the time that they got to Denver in the Western Conference
Hmm.
Finals, it felt like the Lakers have been playing playoff level basketball for a month prior to the play-in tournament just to assure their spot. And it felt like they were cooked. And it very much so could be that same possibility for the Phoenix Suns if Beal or Kevin Durant misses time. But speaking of those Lakers, them in the Golden State Warriors, they played in the second round last year. Obviously, the Lakers advanced to the conference finals just to get swept by the soon-to-be champions at the time, Denver Nuggets. Both teams went into the lab and retooled. We're going to start with the Lakers. They brought back D'Lo. Austin Reeves extended. Rui Hachimura brought back. Jared Vanderbilt, he got extended. They also bring in Gabe Vincent, Torian Prince, Jackson Hayes, Christian Wood. Those are the guys that I expect to see minutes. Obviously, you had the draft of Hood Schifino and Maxwell Lewis. But this Lakers team, this feels like the Lakers team that won the title. If I'm being quite frank, and I'm not saying that, I'm predicting them to win the title, but you have Anthony Davis. You have two good, solid centers behind him, and Christian Wood and Jackson Hayes. They're not quite the defenders that McGee and Dwight Howard were, but you got some size on this Lakers team. You have good defense, I think, in Vanderbilt. Gabe Vincent, another guy that they brought in. Um, could they maybe flip out one of those pieces that's a score for some better perimeter defense? Maybe. We'll see where they're at come the trade deadline, but this roster feels like a roster that can win games if LeBron or Anthony Davis rest versus some of the more not great teams. And that's not something you could say last year for the Lakers. And with LeBron going into year 21, going to be 39 this year, and with Anthony Davis's injury history, you need to factor in having a deep enough roster to win games if one of those guys misses. And I feel like the Lakers really went out there and did that this offseason. And I think they're going to be in a better spot throughout the regular season than they were last year. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing for me is I love Gabe Vincent. Seeing him on that Heat team, he like looked like a bat out of hell, like in the playoffs, bro. And for me, I think it's a huge help for LeBron, especially because he was always kind of relying on that one guy to really hit those clutch shots. And he never really had that, I don't think, in LA yet. I mean, Anthony Davis is there, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure how reliable he is. In crunch time, like he did play very well when they won in the past couple of years, but he's not like Gabe Vincent clutch. So that's a
Having the
huge,
flexibility of
yeah, that's
D'Lo and
huge.
Gabe Vincent
Hmm.
to have one of them out there with LeBron and Reeves, who we know obviously he's going to be out there. He hit some big shots last year. Felt like, um, the nights Anthony Davis was off, Austin Reeves felt like he was the next best scorer behind LeBron James.
Hmm.
So we'll be interested to see there. Rui Hachimura, this Lakers team, it's got weapons. And for the Warriors, it felt like they were trying to bridge the gap with Jordan Poole and Moses Moody and James Wiseman, and they won that title 2 years ago, and everybody said the Warriors are perfect. They bridged the gap, and lo and behold, we found out last year they didn't bridge the gap. Those young guys didn't show up, and bridging the gap. I'm not trying to take a shot here at the Warriors. That is a tough, tough thing to do, man. Not a lot of teams in any sport can really do it, and the Warriors committed. The Warriors saw enough out of Steph Curry last year, and they saw a lack of enough out of Klay Thompson to say, hey, we need to go in on a more veteran led roster and a roster that we think can go toe-to-toe with these playoff teams and have guys that we can depend on other than Steph Curry in the playoffs. It felt like that playoff series versus the Lakers. For myself as a LeBron fan, kind of felt like a little bit of comeuppance for Steph Curry. Those years where LeBron had to go to the finals with Tristan Thompson and Kyle Korver and face off against Steph, Clay, and KD. The shoe was on the other foot, right? Steph felt like that he was out there alone against an
Yeah.
actual team. So now the Warriors coming to this year with Curry, Clay, Kuminga, Draymond Green dealing with an injury, so he won't be there to start. Kevon Looney, Chris Paul projects to be the sixth man of the team. You still have Wiggins, Gary Payton. So this team definitely feels better, right? And if Chris Paul can really adapt to that six-man role and run that second unit, in those playoff games, as soon as Steph Curry left the floor, it all fell apart. If the Warriors don't have that problem anymore, they're back in title contention. And with Chris Paul, you figure with Chris Paul and those shooters, even if Chris Paul isn't quite the offensive player he once was in terms of scoring, he'll always have that IQ and passing ability. This Warriors team projects to be another top tier team. Some people are down on the Chris Paul acquisition. Are you on the positive or negative side of it?
It's tough because Chris Paul is probably the least expected person you would have on that team. And I was shocked when they made that trade. Obviously, you had to get rid of Jordan Poole after what happened last year, but
Yeah.
getting Chris Paul, it might be. It's just so interesting. It's so hard to predict, but it might be a huge help. Honestly, I mean, he might need that extra boost, that veteran leadership. Obviously he's a veteran, but he hasn't really gotten to the peak. So I think having Curry, Draymond, Clay there to really help him and like boost him up, especially when it comes playoff time, because he needs that. He's come up short so many times, and I think he'll be a huge help come playoff time. And I'm excited to see how it kind of looks on the offense and on the defense too, because people forget Chris Paul's a great defender. He's getting older, not as good as he used to be, but
Still
still.
better than Jordan Poole.
I was about to say that. Yes, super a huge upgrade over Jordan Poole. So maybe that's what they needed. So we'll see how that kind of plays out.
Yeah, and I think just having more of the veteran presence on the team, they brought in Rudy Gay as well. Not that he's going to get substantial minutes in a postseason run, but again, another veteran in the locker room. The team is very much so leaning into win now mode around Steph Curry. And I think having that blend of kids and vets in the locker room, you heard stories after the fact of Steph, Clay, and Dre did their own thing, and the kids did their own thing, and there wasn't a real bridge in the locker room. Led to some problems with the team and cohesiveness. And, even if Chris Paul's not best friends with these guys, he's a professional, he's a vet, and it's just a little bit different. And I think it could lead to more success. But I do want to just give a quick rundown of last year's standings, and we'll stop where we need to. The Nuggets, obviously, they won the title, and they were the 1 seed, 53-29 last year. Jamal Murray, year removed off that ACL injury, looked real good. Michael Porter Jr. looked really good. We talked about the Nuggets a little bit a couple months ago, talking about their title. So I don't want to go too in depth here, but Nikola Jokic was, he was ranked number 2 in ESPN's top 100 players. To me, I think he deserves the crown of best player in basketball right now. He was the best offensive player last year, and he won the title. And they gave it to Giannis, who was eliminated in the first round by an 8 seed. I'll leave that at that. The Grizzlies, they were the 2 seed, 51-31. Obviously, they got bounced by the veteran-led Lakers. John Morant, he's suspended the first 25 games of the season here. They got Marcus Smart. So that'll probably affect their regular season standings. But I do think that this team is set up for a better potential postseason run with Marcus Smart than Dillon Brooks, obviously. Losing Tyus Jones, though, losing their backup point guard where they have to lose John Morant for the first 25 games of the season. That kind of sucks. They extended Desmond Bane, but overall it's mostly the same Grizzlies team as last year. The Sacramento Kings, they were the surprise team in the league, 48-34. They were a very fast, very explosive team, but they feel like maybe a potential regression candidate if we're being honest here. But the Kings last year What do you think? You think that's the new standard, or do you think that that was just kind of Clippers dealing with injuries, Suns didn't get KD till midway through, Warriors injuries, Lakers injuries, and they just kind of capitalized?
Like the beam. I think the Kings are for real. I think last year was their first year. You know, they were. I forgot the drought that they had, but it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was the first year that they had a breakthrough eventually. And I think that they're still going to be a top team in the West. You'll see when my predictions come out. But they still have the same team, still have that identity, and it's huge in the NBA. People don't realize like you could add players, this and that, but you got to have chemistry and an identity. And I think that they definitely excelled in that last year, and I don't see it stopping this year. They're only going to get better. Sabonis got his recognition. You know, he was an all-star back in the day, but really has his name on there. De'Aaron Fox, he, you know,
Swiper.
looking great. Swiper, no swiping. So we'll see. And Herder too. Herder was a huge addition. People don't realize like
Yeah,
how sharpshooter
they
he
were
is.
the shocking team, and on paper they just didn't look like a 3 seed. So
Mhm,
it they obviously still on paper don't look like a 3 seed, right? I mean, but they were
mhm.
last year, so you got to take the team seriously. We talked about the Suns at length, but I just an interesting note to point out: they started the season last year with Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, I believe Jay Crowder and Aiton. They're starting this year with Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Josh Okogie, Kevin Durant, and Yusuf Nurkic. So the new ownership group, they came in, they turned it around. They flipped the team. The Clippers, they're in potential James Harden talks. So I'm going to project as if they don't have James Harden because it hasn't happened yet, and I'm not sure that it will based on what I've seen. The Clippers are aggressively trying to get it done, but Daryl Morey wants an all-star player back. He wants to compete in this window, meaning it's going to need to be a 3-team deal. And to imagine a 3-team deal gets done in the next 11 days, um, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Um, so you're dealing with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. Are they going to be out there? And they're not going to be out there. And I try as hard as I can to not bake injuries into my predictions, but not baking a little bit of injury concern in for the Clippers would just kind of be crazy at this point. The Warriors were the 6 seed, the Lakers were the 7 seed. We touched on them. The 8 seeded Timberwolves. Obviously, they made the big acquisition of Rudy Gobert. Him and Karl Anthony Towns, it didn't look good, but they were only able to play like 30 something games together. Do you have any faith in the Timberwolves working out with Cat and Gobert? No. Okay. I'm going to ask you a different question then. Is what, in terms of the top 100 players, where does Anthony Edwards fall next season? This year, he was, I believe,
Ant-Man.
he was top 20. Does he crack top 10? For reference, Shea was number 8 this year.
I think he goes 15. I wouldn't put him 10 yet. I think
Top
what
15.
hurts. I think it's going to hurt him is that team. I don't think that team's going to do well next year, and I think because of that, he's not going to be able to perform as well
Yeah,
as
I
he
mean, Shea moved up and the Thunder were the 10 seed. So you certainly could.
True.
With the
True.
Pelicans, the question is and will always be Zion Williamson. And
Zion,
again, it's
bro.
like the Clippers. At a certain point, you do need to bake injury risk in there. Now,
Mhm.
Zion looks good. He looks like he's lost some weight, looks like he's been fully committed.
Yeah.
But I feel like we've been down this road before with Zion where the hype was there. And, I'm rooting for Zion by all means. I'm not rooting against him, but I'll believe it when I see it type of thing. The Thunder, they're a team that I think can take a Sacramento Kings esque leap potentially. Shea looked really good last year. You have Chet coming back. Um, the young guys getting better, both Jalen Williams, Josh Giddey. They are an exciting team, the OKC Thunder. The Dallas Mavericks were the 11 seed last year, didn't even make the play in with Luka and Kyrie Irving. And I do want to spend a moment on this.
Luka.
And I don't know where you have the Mavericks. I'm not going to reveal where I have them at this moment, but I will say this. If the Mavericks don't make the playoffs, and probably if the Mavericks don't make the second round, there will be rumblings of Luka Doncic out the door. And if the Mavericks aren't good by the trade deadline, there will be rumblings of Kyrie Irving to a new team. All I'm saying is the Lakers can offer D'Lo and Rui Hachimura. I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm just gonna leave it at that.
Honestly, it'll help the Mavericks more than they think. So
I'm just gonna leave it at that. You have the Utah Jazz. They're young. Walker Kessler had a really good year. Laurie
yeah,
Markkinen, an All-Star
really
year.
good.
Felt like they finished right about where I thought they would, but they were hot at the start of last year. They were like the 1 seed for the first month, if you remember. So maybe they start off
Yeah,
hot again. Portland was the 13 seed. Obviously, they have a whole new looking team. Scoot Henderson is the future
Scoob.
there. The Rockets, they brought in Ime Udoka, Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks. They drafted one of those Thompson twins. I always mix up the names, so I'm not going to even pretend to guess right now. But they're looking like they're on the upward swing of things. And then the Spurs, of course, they brought in Victor Wembanyama, and
Wimpy.
he was the most touted prospect since LeBron James. So, with that being said, that's the review of last year. Nolan, why don't you run down your Western Conference predictions 1 through 15? Stop where you
All
see
right.
fit.
All right. First, I got to roll with the Denver Nuggets. They won the chip. Gotta respect that. So they're one. Two, I'm gonna roll with the Golden State Warriors. I think Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond. They need one more dance, and I think that they have a really good year this year. So I got them at two. Three, I got the Phoenix Suns. I mean, that trio is just gross. So have them at three. Four, I'm gonna take the Kings. I know you just were talking about that, so I think they still remain a top team in the West. Not as good as last year, but top four, they'll take that with the West being that stacked. Five, I know that Ja Morant is suspended for part of the season, but I'm gonna take Memphis at five. Marcus Smart, I love that guy, bro. He's a stud and a half on defense and offense. He can get it done too, and he's gonna be a huge help for that team. So I got them at five. Six, first surprise, I'm gonna take the OKC Thunder. I think this is the year that they finally really improve. Those draft picks pan out, and Chet looks like he was shown, and Josh Giddey, he's been looking great. Shy's great, so they have a nice little team there. So I'm gonna take them at six. Seven, I'm gonna take it Dallas. All right, so for me, I think this is a year that Luka has to prove it, and I think that he does. But obviously the West is tough, and you need some players to help you out. Kyrie's there, but he needs some help, more help. So I mean, as of now, I'll keep him at seven, but trade deadline, something like that. Eight, I got the Lakers. So for me, I think the Lakers are a very good team. I just don't trust their health, and I could totally see them kind of like I'm not sure if it was last year where they were struggling. They had injuries like every other week. LeBron was hurt, AD, and for me, I think it might be similar. They're just getting older, and it's tough. They got to play all these games, and especially with the awards. They might want to play all these games. So that's more fatigue on their bodies. So have them at eight. Nine, I'm going to take Houston. So for me, I'm a huge Udoka fan. I think that he's a stud, and I think he gets that team back on track. So I'm going to take them at nine. 10, I got Utah. They're young. They're good. Kessler, a nice little chip there. So I'll keep them at 10. 11, I got Minnesota. They could take a step back, and I think it's the year that they kind of just clean house. Maybe at the trade deadline, maybe after the season, but not a good year for them. 12, I got the Clippers. Like we've mentioned, James Harden maybe, maybe not, but they just I don't know. That team's just a wreck. Paul George is there. Kawhi Leonard, you think they were better, but they just can't get it right. 13, I got New Orleans. Kind of the same thing. They just have a lot of people on that team. Zion, McCollum's awesome, but they just can't get it right. Injuries, all that. So I can't really trust them too much. 14, I got Portland. They might be a surprise team this year. I was mentioned that before. For me, they got a lot of pieces from those trades. And like you said, like they might just decide, they want to win too many games this year, get those draft picks higher, but you never know, man. That team looks good on paper. They got some studs, so I wouldn't be surprised. And 15, I'm to take the Spurs. Wemby's gonna be awesome, but they still need more years to really compete. So I'm gonna keep them at 15. But you never know.
Yeah, so for people that didn't watch the East episode, we saw a lot more eye to eye on the East, and I feel like the East is very cut and dry in terms of the way that people at least like view the tiers of teams. Whereas I feel like the West, there's a lot more debate. So, I'm sure there's somebody that already commented after watching this, and I'm gonna ask you the questions I think will be talked about. One, not really a question, more of a comment. Houston at 9, egregiously high. That's just my take. They're egregiously high. Two, do you hate the city of Los Angeles? Because the Lakers, who we just talked about getting better as a team, dropping in seeding, and the Clippers not even being in the play-in. I know we bake injury risk in for Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, but man, I didn't know that they're both out for the season.
So, all right. So for me, it's just the Lakers are old, bro, and I cannot trust them at all. It's the same. Honestly, it's the same thing. The Clippers and Lakers are super similar when it comes to the injury risk for me, especially when it comes to the West. Like they're not in the East. You need to have these players on the court to win games. And it's not like, like the East, you could have, LeBron out for 10, 15 games and you could still probably get a 5, maybe even 4 seed. But in the West, there's no shot. So obviously I don't wish for injuries, but you just got to keep that in play when you're making predictions. So
Yeah.
even if they stay relatively healthy, I don't know, man. The West is really tough this year. So
Yeah, I hear
maybe
you.
6 the highest for me if I did the
I
Lakers.
I know a lot of people also are high on Minnesota as a regular season team going into this year. I'm not. So like I kind of agree with you there, but I did want to just acknowledge that, that might stir some feathers too, having Minnesota below Houston. But let me get to my predictions here. Let me pull them up. All right. So my 1 seed, I also have the Denver Nuggets. They were the 1 seed last year. They still have a pretty cohesive team. Jokic seems like his style of basketball, knock on wood here, but he seems like he's a pretty a safe bet to play 65 plus games, right? He's going to be out there. Jamal Murray looked pretty healthy. MPJ, obviously there's some injury concern there, but this team, the coach is there, the core group of guys is there. They know how to win together already. They'll come out and be just as good. 2, I have, and I'm gonna switch back here just so I could see your face. As my 2 seed, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. Listen,
Bro, no
no,
way. No.
dude, they were the second best team in the West last year. That's why they were in the conference finals. I don't know how you say no way. They were just proved to be the second best team in the West. And I get it; it's a long regular season, but I think this team is just so deep. Remember, this team last year started off so dreadful because of Pat Bev and Russell Westbrook, and they just had a bad roster last year. After the trade deadline, they had the 3rd best record in the West,
Yeah.
but behind, I believe, the Nuggets and the Kings. Like once this, and that was with LeBron and Anthony Davis injuries. Um, if those guys could stay healthy, just one of them, this team is good enough to win a lot of games. So I have the Lakers as my 2 seed. Full transparency to the audience, I'm a LeBron guy. So am I reaching? Maybe. Oh well, fight me about it in the comment section. At 3, I have Golden State. We both have them pretty high. I think Steph Curry's an MVP candidate once again. I think Chris Paul, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I like that this team leaned into the veteran side of things and went into the now timeline. 4, I have Memphis. This team has shown the ability to win games without Ja before. I just think those top 3 teams having their stars at the start of the season puts them above Memphis. At 5, I have Phoenix. Kevin Durant or Bradley Beal is going to miss sometime, and I just don't think that they have the depth to win a lot of games in the West when those guys are missing. So for me, they fall down a little farther. 6, I got Sacramento. I still believe in the Kings. It's just so hard for me to put a De'Aaron Fox-led team above the teams with those level of superstars. 7, I have OKC. They were overproduced last year. I think this is the year that they get in the playoffs. 8, I have Dallas. Luka and Kyrie Irving are just too good to miss the playoffs again. 9, I have the Clippers, just barely missing out for the same reasons you mentioned. Injury. Minnesota at 10. I think Anthony Edwards is good enough. And, it's the same team as last year. I got him in about the same spot as last year. New Orleans at 11. I'll believe it when I see it with Zion staying healthy. 12, I have San Antonio. I think Wembanyama comes in and does all he can, and that leads to them being the 12 seed. 13, Utah. 14, Houston. And 15, A team that I told you I think is actively the only team trying to lose games, the Portland Trailblazers. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to throw some questions, comments, criticisms my way that you think could be coming in the comments
So
that aren't Lakers related, because I already defended that.
yeah. For me, why do you think OKC can't reach a higher seed?
Now they certainly could, right? Steph Curry misses time like he did last year. If Kevin Durant misses an extended period of time, LeBron or Anthony Davis, sure. Just going off of, you know, the team staying relatively healthy, I don't think Shea is just quite at that level, and I don't think that the team has a second star, right? With the Warriors, you have Steph, who's a clear level above Shea, in my opinion. But even Clay and Chris Paul and Wiggins, those guys feel better than Giddey and Chet right now. For the Lakers, obviously LeBron and Anthony Davis. For the Suns, obviously Booker and Kevin Durant. And in the regular season, you know, when certain teams take nights off, I think that the Thunder are deep enough that they could be good. But, I have them as the 7 seed. I think that's pretty good. I'm sure one of those top 6 teams will suffer an injury, and I think OKC could avoid the play-in, but I like them this year. They're an exciting team, and I think they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs. I have them versus the Lakers. I will say this, in that matchup, I think it's tough for them size-wise. Chet's tall, but I don't think he's got the strength, but that seems like their weakness, attacking the interior, but, they're also a young, quick team. You get them
Yeah.
matched up against that Lakers team, Braun and AD going to have to be hustling.
Yeah.
So yeah, that'll be an interesting one. Any other critiques coming my way?
Nah, it's more so we have to wait till the season starts, and then I can really grill your
Yeah,
ass.
I
And,
mean, yeah. Well, the West is tough. The West is tough. We
yeah,
talked about that, but everybody, be sure to leave your predictions in the comment section. Nolan, I don't know if you know this. The 8 Ball, his future at the West. Do you know who it is?
I know the East. I don't know the West.
The West is the Clippers. Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah, I mean,
I
listen,
got no comment. Plead
listen,
the fifth.
listen. He gave us Nuggets 21-1 last year, so. But betting on the Clippers is tough. Betting on the Clippers is tough.
Yeah.
But again, leave all your predictions in the comments. Odds are you agreed with one of us because we had some major
Hopefully.
differences here. But unless you're one of those guys that's saying the Jazz are going to take the leap, then you don't agree with us. But leave all the comments down below. Leave a like. Subscribe to the channel for more content just like this. And until next time, peace.
Deuces.